What's poppin', everybody? Tara Lynch here with the next big thing, the video cast sharing all things infotainment. This week's sports reporter Jenna Harner joins me to discuss what it's like covering sports right now as kind of everything is happening. Plus, we go over this week's news bites and top trends. You know what to do. Let's jump right in. As always, we begin with this week's news bites, and we start with President Trump. He made some controversial comments this week, calling out doctors like Dr. Anthony Fauci for battling the COVID-19 virus, saying that people don't want to hear about this virus anymore. But this comes as the country is heading toward another COVID-19 peak. Dr. Anthony Fauci, he's been social distancing himself from the White House and that coronavirus task force, and he is encouraging all Americans to hunker down and continue to take this seriously. And the debate tonight, well, it might be a bit quieter than that first one. There are new rules that will be imposed at the debate in Nashville tonight. Both candidates will get an uninterrupted 2 minutes to answer the initial question posed by the moderator. After each candidate has had a chance to speak, the mics will open for the remainder of the period. Now, these rules were adopted by both parties. They both signed off, so it'll be interesting to see how this will affect the debate. Tune in tonight. So if you're a sports fan, particularly a Pittsburgh sports fan, you probably have seen this face before. Jenna Harner, Ithaca College graduate. Jenna, thanks so much for joining me today on The Next Big Thing.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here virtually. It's kind of the new norm, and I love it. We're getting used to it now. It's good. It's good.
It's good. We're getting there. We were both talking offline. We're both kind of doing the same thing. So figuring it out as we go seems to be the name of the game. I want to kind of start with how you got interested in sports journalism. You know, we share a very 6 degrees of separation relationship. We both went to Ithaca College. We both live in Connecticut. We both have connections to Buffalo at some point. So how does a girl from Connecticut end up in the Pittsburgh market now?
That's so funny. This industry and the world itself is so small, and then the industry itself, you'll realize, is even smaller. It always blows my mind. It's like somebody knows somebody or somebody knows you, and it's crazy. So it doesn't surprise me that we were going to cross paths at some point. But yeah, so I grew up in Connecticut. I always Ithaca was really always the top school on my list. I kind of wanted the combination of lacrosse as well as the communications program. And I actually wanted to go into news. I loved news so much, like breaking news, hard news. I wanted to be that, hard news reporter that was at the fires and the shootings and all that. And so then when I got to college at Ithaca, everybody was like, why aren't you doing sports? They were all like, everyone was so thrown. And I was like, I never really thought about it. I always was just so dead set on hard news. And so I kind of got pulled into the sports department. I'd grown up a huge sports fan, always watching, Sundays were football Sundays, hockey was always on at night, family vacations were always kind of centered around, hey, we're going to St. Louis, we're going to see a Cards game, something like that, so that was always a big part of my life, but I never thought about it. And then I ended up making a career out of it. Ithaca really did a lot to get me there. And my first job out of college was in Elmira, New York. I was there for just about 2 years. And then I got the job in Buffalo. So I stayed in New York a little bit, which was great. Kind of a joke of I've been in Central Western, upstate, what everybody else wants to call it, all of that New York for, the better half of 6 years. And then back in March, I moved to Pittsburgh. Got a job here in Pittsburgh at Channel 11, which you can see behind me. We are the NBC affiliate here. And I've been here for, the last handful of months, and it's been wild. It's been crazy, but, you never know where this industry is going to take you. And I think that's what's the most exciting part about all of it.
So you moved at the end of March. March was a big month. That's kind of when the world seemed to shut down, and you were moving to a city south of Buffalo, just trying to kind of get your feet wet in that new market. So what was that process like? How did you kind of get acclimated to a new city, a new sports market, and oh, by the way, you had no sports to report on?
I look back and I'm like, I don't know how we did it. I really don't. I mean, it was kind of like, everything that we've all been doing, had to be creative in so many ways. But like the job process itself was so quick, and it kind of like was just a little bit ahead of everything with COVID. So, I interviewed here at the end of February, and I remember like people were kind of a little wary of flying at that time, and I flew for my interview. So, my mom was really kind of like, hey, make sure you're sanitizing. And I saw a couple people with masks at the airport, and I was like, oh, like, should I probably have one of these? Like, it was crazy to think about, like, we didn't think about anything like that at that time. And then I got the job that Friday, and then it was just this whole whirlwind of, in 3 weeks, I'm moving to a new city. And I think that in a weird way almost helped a little bit with everything else going on in the outside world, because I had so much to focus on with, again, moving to a new market, moving, obviously, Pittsburgh, it's the Steelers and the Penguins and the Pirates, but for the last 2 years, all I'd known was Buffalo. I mean, obviously, the teams they play and things like that, but I'm so narrowed in and focused on those teams that now it's, oh my gosh, I'm learning the history of these teams. I have to be up to speed with all this. So it was this whole big, insane life change that all happened at once. And it's tough. I mean, honestly, with, even just everything with athletes, it's the same kind of thing that we're doing here. It's all virtual. So it's a lot of Zoom calls. It's a lot of, introducing myself virtually. All these reporters have been here for years and years. And here I am, fresh and new. It's like, hi, you have no idea who I am, but I'm about to ask you a really important question about the team or something to that extent. So it's this big, it's been an interesting learning process, but I mean, it's been so fun, and now I'm feeling like I'm kind of settled, which is very strange because everything else has been so crazy.
Exactly. That it's just been a really weird year all around, and you've had so much change happening. So I want to talk about virtual reporting. You kind of alluded to it in your last answer, but how do you handle a Zoom press conference as the new person, and how do you handle that as a female reporter? Do you feel like you are given a fair shake, a fair chance to ask your questions? Is it difficult to kind of butt in? What is it like?
Well, it's really funny, and I don't know if this is the same way with every market, but every team here does them differently. So you're like, I think because everyone was thrown into such a learning curve. I mean, I did not know what Zoom was before any of this happened, which I don't think a lot of us did, which is also really funny. But this with the Steelers, it's you're on the call and you have to click the raise your hand button, and sometimes they might call on you and sometimes they might not. Granted, I'm on most of them every day, so usually they will call on me. But some of the tough parts in like the post-game press conferences is like they'll ask, you'll get 4 or 5 questions and then they're moving on to the next player. So you might not get that player, but your hand might still be raised. So like I had a question for, I want to say it was like Cam Hayward or something, and then they moved him off and they brought in James Conner, and you're immediately like, oh my gosh, I have to change, like, defense to offense. I'm totally changing, what question I'm going to ask here. You have to be on the spot a little bit with that. But with the Steelers, at least, you're raising your hand. The Penguins is the same way. It's just through WebEx. And then with the Pirates, that was kind of one of the most interesting things, because I'm also the only female sports reporter and anchor here in this market, which is surprising, but it's just, I mean, a lot of the people that that are in this market have been here for years and years and years, which is the testament to how great this market is. But with the Pirates, I'm the only female on, and it's me and, 13, 14 other guys. And you click the unmute button and you go and ask your question. And that's actually the same with Pitt. So it's kind of the same way being in a locker room. I'm never going to be afraid to ask a question. And usually it's good. Like if someone starts talking, someone will butt out and back off. And there are times where I'm like, oh, go ahead. And then there's other times where I'm like, no, I'm going to ask this question because I need it. Or it's, we're trying to get it in the show quick or something. And I need, Coach Narduzzi from Pitt to talk about the tough loss. So for that, you do have to jump in a little bit. And thankfully, Buffalo, being in the Sabres locker room and being one of the few females there, that gave me a lot of help with that, just jumping in and being like, hey, we're all reporters here. I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes by any means, but, I want this question answered. I'm going to ask it.
Definitely, you have to balance that, being assertive and being pushy, and where's that line, definitely. I want to kind of take you back to August, because you went from covering not a lot of active sports, and then August hit and you were covering everything basically in Pittsburgh. That's kind of when NFL kind of started with their camps, the NHL was going, Major League Baseball was going, you had college football kind of coming down the pike. So just what was it like kind of going from 0 to 60 at that point?
It was a lot. And it's, in a weird way, I keep saying it's like a delicate balance of things are easier with Zoom press conferences, but also they're more complicated because your days get so much longer, because we would have, I would be jumping back and forth. I'd be on a Steelers Zoom at 9, a Penguins Zoom at 11, a Pitt Zoom at noon. And sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. Or, a Zoom with the Pitt athletic director or something that, we really kind of had to just, it was not, things were slow, but we were, still making content, still doing a lot of specials, which was amazing when things weren't happening. But then all of a sudden, like you said, everything's all happening at once. So then you have to really kind of prioritize things too. And it's like, okay, what are the big storylines here? How are we following this? I'm going to go on Penguins today. My boss would be on the Steelers Zooms. And it was, it was strange to have kind of everything, because I feel like we're usually used to having like the NHL and NFL overlap a little bit, but never did I think I'd be, covering playoff hockey at the same time that the NFL season was starting. That in itself is like, it was a lot of busy days. But they also, it felt so good, as I'm sure it did for you too. It was like, okay, we finally have sports back. Things are actually happening. Like, the way we cover things changes, but they're still happening. There's still sports. And I think we kind of all were like, I'm never taking this for granted again. Like, I don't care how busy it is, just because I missed it so much.
Kind of just a sigh of relief at that point that sports were back. And, as you kind of look forward, what are you excited about for the rest of the fall season? You have an undefeated football team right now in the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are you looking forward to as, with this next season in Pittsburgh?
I am looking forward to seeing what happens with the Steelers seasons here. Starting with the Titans game this coming weekend, it's going to be probably one of the best games this season. I'm hoping. I say that and I'm like, gosh knows it'll be like ridiculous or crazy or something. So I'm really hoping that that's a good thing. And then honestly, just kind of looking forward to the start of hockey season. As you and I have talked, hockey is my favorite. I love football so much, but hockey is just that like one tier up for me. So I'm really excited for that to kind of come back and just kind of see. I think the players just missed having fans, missed having people. And I think as we all kind of work through this here, so many people are trying to figure out ways that fans can come back to things, and they can do it safely, and they can do it, in a way to limit exposure if there is COVID and all these crazy things that, we're dealing with now that we just never thought we'd have to deal with. But I am excited. Like, that was probably one of the coolest moments too, just speaking of fans, like when Heinz Field brought back fans for the last 2 weeks, it felt different. There was such it was quiet before, but then obviously with nobody there, it's going to be silent, but it had that extra energy, it does rejuvenate cities where, people we were all so hungry for sports for so long. And now it's like, not only are they back, but you have an opportunity to safely see your team in person. And, I think it did a lot for the players too. But just following the Steelers team has been so fun already. And, you do kind of develop these relationships with these teams where you're, with them, you talk to them on a daily basis. So you really get to know these guys and just kind of see all that they're going through. Because I think also at the end of the day, we forget, or sometimes at least I do, that it's like, yes, they're professional athletes, but they are going through everything that we're going through right now, which, everybody's relatable in this sense. And it's been fun to kind of see how they're all dealing with everything together.
Pittsburgh Steelers, they're rolling right now, so that Titans game is going to be super interesting. Juju, you got Claypool, you've got TJ Watt. The Steelers right now, they're just rolling. My roommate is a Steelers fan. I am a Buffalo Bills fan. We will meet later in the season. You and me, Jenna, we're going to have to go at it too, I guess. So we'll see who comes out on top then. This weekend, though, I have to say, I'm rooting for the Steelers, I think. They're my pick against the Titans. I can't see Derrick Henry stiff-arm somebody again like he did to Josh Norman. Can't do it.
Oh my gosh. And it's been so funny too, because that's the huge story of the week. And all the guys here are joking, Cam Hayward on Zoom this morning said something to the extent of, how do you stop, or how do you plan for Derrick Henry or stop him? And he goes, oh yeah, put Bud Dupree in at running back. And we're all like, okay, that's hysterical. So it's, it's so fun that, we're having these storylines again. I think that's what I missed the most. And oh man, the Bills are going to rebound. The fact that the Jets are coming to town, you have the Jets and the Patriots. This should be 2 fantastic weeks. How good is it going to feel to beat the Patriots?
I don't know. I don't think that's really happened too much in my life, except for like when they sat Tom Brady when they were already going into the playoffs. I think we beat them like maybe in 2014 or something in the last game of the season, because the Patriots were sitting everybody. So I don't know, it might be nice to actually beat them outright. So that might be fun. Not something I'm used to for sure. But Jenna, thank you so much. We'll catch up on those games, and we really appreciate your time today on The Next Big Thing.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, we got to head over to those trends we love. We move on to the trends we love this week, and something that is trending right now across the country is voting. So there are a lot of questions. How can I vote? Where do I vote? How do I track my ballot if I voted by mail? How do I know if I'm registered to vote? These are all valid questions, and hopefully we have some answers here for you. So if you've already mailed in your ballot and you want to track that, simply Google track my ballot and your state. Every state typically has this kind of system where you can track the mail and ensure that it is received by the deadline. Now, if you are questioning if you're registered to vote or you can't remember, go to vote.org and you can fill out the information there. It will probably take you to your state's website. Fill out that information and see if you are registered to vote. Now, a lot of the registration deadlines have passed in many states, so it might be a little late to register now, but you can always re-register for next year's election. And if you're stressed out that you didn't vote by mail, don't worry. The polls will be open on November 3rd. Just Google your state and the polling locations, and you can find the right place to vote in your district. And I hope this helps, and I encourage everybody to head out to those polls on November 3rd. And Bachelor Nation, we hear you, we see you, we understand your stress right now. Let's go over what happened this week in the second week of The Bachelorette. So this was the first week of the group dates, and of course, Claire handpicked Dale to be in that first group. That led to some jealousy from the other men, of course. Now, what's going to happen next? Well, we have to tune in next week to find out, because there has already been a lot of drama, lots of jealousy, lots of conversation between the men, lots of disagreement. Did Dale and Claire have a relationship or meet before the show? We don't know. I mean, the questions that are left: is Youssef going to stir up some trouble? Is Claire going to run away with Dale? I have no idea, but I think that we can all tune in ABC for The Bachelorette. This is surely going to be the most dramatic Bachelorette season in history. As we wrap up our show, our trend for you this week is all about snacking. So if you're like me, you typically get bored and then you head to the pantry. And for me, this area right here, my dining room, is right next to my pantry, so it makes it really easy to go grab snacks in the middle of the day. But this is probably not good, because we're all kind of stuck in our homes and sitting at our computers all day. So what can you do to curb your appetite? Well, I have a couple of recommendations for you. Number one, try to drink a lot of water. So if you can drink upwards of like a gallon a day, you'll kind of trick your body into feeling full. Another tip, if you have gum or mints, if you can kind of chew gum throughout the day, that'll make your body think that you're eating something when you really aren't. So again, tricking your body. And if you really do need to have a snack, try to keep vegetables or fruits out in plain sight, whether that's a fruit bowl on your counter or just easy access to those snacks, because you'll be more likely to eat something if it's out in plain sight rather than heading into your cabinet or your pantry to grab those chips. So hopefully this helps, and you can keep snacking throughout the day to keep your energy up and your focus intact. Okay, all you cool cats and kittens, that's all the time we had today on The Next Big Thing. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tune in 2 weeks from now. That'll be post-election, so we'll have all of that for you as well. And remember, when you need the news that pops, I'll be here with The Next Big Thing.